Hello, and welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby, the show where we talk about difficult things so we can shine light on whatever is imprisoning us. I'm Toby Dorr. In today's episode, we're going to explore a stage 4 cancer diagnosis with my guest, Tekquiree Spencer. Tekquiree is an actress, filmmaker, wellness coach, and advocate. It wasn't until her diagnosis of stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer that she had to apply everything she learned, go within, and do everything God was telling her to do so she could heal. Her healing journey has taught her that health plus wellness is not just about what we eat, but also what we think, feel, and how we stand in our power and love ourselves. Tekquiree is the host and creator of the Thrive Beyond Cancer Summit, the founder of Thrive Beyond Cancer, a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to help cancer patients and survivors thrive, and the CEO of Thrive by Tekquiree. Hello, Tekquiree. I'm so delighted to have you on my podcast this week. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Yes, yes.
My name is Tekquiree, and I am a wellness advocate, and I am also a filmmaker.
I think
and
that's exciting. Yeah.
Yes.
Your husband's a camera producer or something, isn't he?
He is. He's a director and a producer
Yes.
and an editor. So
wow.
Yeah.
Exciting. So maybe you should do your own podcast because you got all the
right?
tools.
Some people, they tell me, I should do a podcast too. So maybe
we'll
that's in the works.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that'd be fun. Well, I'd love to help you with it if you have any questions. So just let me know.
Oh, thank you.
So before we start, I kind of like to start out with a soft little question, which lets people know a little bit more about you. And that is, and I'm going to guess what it is already just by looking at you, but what is your favorite color and why?
You guessed right.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite color is green. Mm-hmm. As you can tell, I have background colors, 2 different colors. Well, my background color is green, and then I have a bunch of houseplants.
Yes.
But it's green. You know what? It wasn't always my favorite color, but it has been for like the last 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it's a healing color, and it represents nature, prosperity, health, all of that good stuff, the heart chakra, all of that. So it's become my color. It's like my rebirth color.
I love that. And green definitely is rebirth. That's what we all look forward to in the spring. We know it's coming when we see the green.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. And I know on your website and in your seminars that you give and things like that, your brand colors are a really dark green and a really bright, neon, vibrant pink, which just are such a great combination that nobody else uses. And I love it. I just love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Tekquiree, what's the hardest decision you've ever had to make?
Ooh. The hardest decision I've ever had to make. There's a few, but I think for me was after I was diagnosed with cancer, I had to tell my doctors, basically speak up for myself, tell them what I wanted to do and what God wanted me to do. And that was difficult because I'm like, I am telling these professionals that I'm not ready to do something. And then at the same time, certain family members wanted me to do a treat like chemotherapy right away. And I knew that that's not what I was supposed to do right away. And so that was very difficult for me because it felt very lonely in that moment. And for me to actually go against what everybody else thought was the right thing, that was very difficult for me.
That would be difficult. And so, we've kind of started to talk a little bit about your cancer diagnosis. And I'm going to guess that is the answer to this next question. But Tell us about a significant event in your life that knocked you down, and how did you pick yourself up?
That is, I know, like cancer, being diagnosed with stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer. And, you know, I was 36 weeks pregnant when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Atlanta, like I'm in Atlanta right now. I was in Atlanta when that happened. And
you live in California, right?
Yes, I live in California, yes. And I went home, you know, to the Bay Area to be with my family, like my mom, my dad, my sisters and brothers. And I wasn't even living in the Bay Area. I was living in LA. My husband and I had a house in LA. We were in Atlanta because my husband was working on a TV show. And so we didn't want him to miss the birth of our child. So we're in Atlanta. And so after having my son in Atlanta, we got on a plane when my son was 3 weeks old. We had to get a note from his doctor so he could travel when he was that little. And I started to go into like depression, you know, like dealing with everything. Like
there are so many things going on there. I mean, just giving birth is, well, I don't know if you'd call it traumatic, because traumatic has a negative connotation, but it is traumatic. It's a traumatic event for your body. And then to be a recently diagnosed cancer patient, and trying to figure out how you're going to navigate being a mother and keeping yourself alive and finding your way through this thing. So I can imagine.
The treatment. And then I had a C-section too. I was totally thinking I wanted to have like this home water birth. With the complete, like everything that I thought was going to happen, it was like the complete opposite. So even dealing with that, and then try not to, you know, go into the whole victim mode, is like, why is this happening to me? Like, what is happening to my life? You know, and I was 34 years old when that was happening. And it was a lot, you know, and here I am, like I was at home in Oakland, California with my family. And, you know, that was a blessing. But I'm like, yo, I'm not in my house in LA. Like I have this new baby, being a mom now, like what treatment options and am I going to choose? Like, it was just very difficult for me to even laugh and enjoy the moment. Like Christmas came around and my family, they had every year, like they get together for Christmas, and I'm like talking aunties, uncles, cousins, everybody. And I just remember being there and feeling so out of my body. Like I couldn't wait for this moment to be over. And it was like, I couldn't enjoy it, you know? And then I felt very much like, in a way, I don't know, just felt like everybody was kind of like staring at me in a way.
Yeah. People don't know how to approach you. Like, you know, oh, she's got this cancer diagnosis. Does she want to talk about it? I mean, should I not bring it up? Should I just talk about the weather? I mean, it's just, people just don't think about it. And that's one of the things that my podcast is about. Let's talk about what we need to do in those situations so that when you're confronted with them, you already have an idea of what is the right way to approach someone. So what would have worked for you? What would you have liked people in your family? How would you have liked them to approach you during that moment?
Like, treat me how you would any other Christmas. How are you doing? Like, you know, like, of course, you know, they're going to ask me about my baby. My baby's like a month and a half at that point. And, you know, don't treat me any different than any other time. Like, I'm still Tekquiree, you know, like, I get it. I'm going through all of these things, but like, just have regular conversation with me, you know? I'm still me. I still like what I like.
Yeah, I like that. And you would have preferred people to talk to you instead of feeling uncomfortable enough that they didn't acknowledge at all. Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes, we don't want to talk about our diagnosis. We
Right.
live, think, and breathe it every moment of every day, especially when you're going through it and it's new for you, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, anything besides that, or giving your advice. I think that's the wrong time to
Oh, yes, it
give
is the wrong time.
advice about what you should do. I'm like, can I enjoy this family time without can we
Yes.
maybe we can have a separate conversation or ask like, hey, I found there's some information I may want to share with you, or something that I found. When's a good time to talk about it? If you want to talk about it, let me know. I would love to share this information with you. Like, not just everybody doesn't want your advice.
I love that. Yeah. And, I think people around you, when you have a loved one that has a cancer diagnosis, they want to help. Our personality is to jump in and fix things and help. And if they aren't doctors, then the best they can do is research on the internet and get ideas for different kinds of treatments. And then they want to, push them on you.
Yep.
And oftentimes you're not interested in hearing about them. So, yeah. Yeah, I can understand.
That's so true. And it's the way they say it too. And I get it. So I definitely had to, as I, reflected after time has gone by, and I'm like, okay, like you said, a lot of people, they were trying to be helpful. They were trying to fix it. And so I had to give them some grace with that, even though in that moment, I just felt so uncomfortable and sometimes even really hurt by what some people have said to me.
And I could think of people that perhaps maybe get diagnosed with lung cancer. And then the first thing you ask them is, oh, were you a smoker?
Right.
Just don't go there.
Right. Right. Do not go there.
Yeah. I had a cancer diagnosis myself in 2004, and my cancer was certainly not as aggressive and advanced as yours. I had thyroid cancer and had to have my thyroid removed. But hearing the word cancer after your name just kind of shakes your whole world. And that's actually what drove me to starting the prison dog program, because I realized we didn't have an unlimited amount of time here. And so far, I hadn't really done anything to make the world a better place. So I better get busy. And so that kind of led me to that. But I remember when I went to the surgeon's office after I'd had the biopsy, and we knew it was cancer. And my husband at the time drove me to the doctor's appointment. And I told him, you stay in the car. I don't want you to come in with me. And he's like, why? And I said, because I want to be free to make my own decision. When I talk to the doctor, I want to be able to decide. I don't want you to tell me what you think I should do. And I know that was hard for him, but it was really important to me to not be pushed into something I didn't want to do.
Right. To hear your own thoughts and listen to your own voice and intuition and all of that. It's so easy to get caught up in what everybody else.
Oh, yes. And all the studies, you can find a study about anything.
Anything.
So, and they're all different. This one's completely this answer, this one's completely on the other side. So you do kind of need that space to find your own path. And it is a very personal journey.
It is.
And I think giving you the space to do that is a gift from the people around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this could be related to the same thing, but I'm wondering if you have a trauma in your past that caused positive change.
This... I guess being diagnosed with stage 4 just did so much to me. I would say that was definitely my biggest trauma that caused positive change for sure. Because just like you said, when you get a diagnosis like that, it is really put in perspective. Wow, how much time do I have here?
Mm-hmm.
There's no more wasting time and
Mm-hmm.
messing around. And it's so interesting though, because literally probably 4 months before my diagnosis, I was sitting with a friend in LA. And I was telling her how I've always wanted to have like this healing center and help people heal from like different diseases and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, he, has Crohn's disease.
Ah.
So, being his partner and
Mm-hmm.
seeing things that he has gone through, I was always interested in my dad. He's always been into health. How can we help people heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing at all that months later I would be going through what I was going through, that I would
Mm-hmm.
be diagnosed with cancer. And, as I'm going through treatment and healing and all of that, I didn't think that I would, be helping people after that. And so
Mm-hmm.
God was like, this is what I want you to do. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that really was like dealing with the trauma of that. And, sometimes even still dealing with the trauma of that,
Mm-hmm.
is what keeps me going to help other people who are going through the same thing or something similar,
Mm-hmm.
because I've realized that we definitely do need community when it comes to that.
Yes, community is so important. And
Yes.
I was at a Bible study this morning and they were talking about 4 different kinds of love, and they said the strongest one is in support, when you're supporting
Mhm.
someone else who's going through something. And
Yeah.
I thought that was so true, and they talked about how bonding that event was, when you're
That's
supporting someone else through something. So
Yes.
I
And you never forget it.
No, no. And when you have a story like yours that has so much rich beauty in it, in the midst of hardship, that story becomes an inspiration to other people. And so you have to tell it. You have to get it
Yeah.
out there in the world because it can do so much good. There's so many people who face the very same uh, moment in their life that you did. And if they have a place to look to for inspiration or advice, wow, that's making a difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember too, I'm normally not anymore so much, but like back then, this was 2016. After my diagnosis, I put it on Facebook that this is what was going on with me. And it was
Hmm.
so freeing to me. But when I did that, so many people reached out to me and told me that they were going through the same thing. I would have never known. And
Yeah.
some are like people my age, and that's what just kind of just made me think like there's a lot of people, you know, my age and younger, and I'm
Hmm.
happy, and I hope and pray that they will start testing people a lot earlier.
Hmm.
But there's young people who are going through cancer too.
Yes, there are. Yes. My son died of Hodgkin's lymphoma and it was just 17 days before his 25th birthday. And,
Wow.
you just think that young people are immune from some of these horrible things
Yep.
and they're not.
And they're not.
They're not.
It's so
And
true.
yeah, and I remember, for part of his journey, I remember his brother and his father and, other family members giving him advice on that he should do chemo, that he should do this. And I know he was feeling like he wanted to make his own decisions and he
Mm.
really struggled with that. He was a young man.
Yeah.
He didn't even live on his own at the time. And, he wanted to make his own decisions and live life his own way.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. And your son was born how many weeks after your diagnosis?
3 weeks after.
3 weeks after. And
3 weeks
his name
after.
has a special significance, doesn't it?
It does. His name means Jace. Well, no, his name means Jace. His name is Jace. His name doesn't mean Jace. His name means healer.
Yes, yes. His name means healer. I think
His
that's
name means
so
healer.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I honestly, like I said, like, this was, and you know, this was around the time when I had that conversation with my friend about what I wanted to do. Um, you know, like help people like heal from like different types of like illnesses and things like that. And so this was in July, right around the time when I got my first when I went to see my OBGYN for my
Mhm.
checkup.
Mhm.
And when I went to go get my punch biopsy done, my first biopsy done. And God was like, okay, we knew like we had to start thinking about names. And God gave me that name. And I
Mhm.
had no idea at all, like, that I would be going through what I was going through. But it's interesting though. Like, oh my God, now I get chills about it because I'm thinking I didn't think about how I had that conversation with my friend, and then God gives me the name, you know, to name him Jace, which means healer. And then for myself and even for him, like, you know, going through all of what we were going through, you know,
Mhm.
um, and for healing and talk about healing and to help people with healing and, you know, not just physically, but, you know, mentally and spiritually as well and emotionally. Um,
Mhm.
so,
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. I know you have a whole brand called Thrive, and
yes,
I love it because you say, I am not a cancer survivor. I am a
yes,
cancer thriver. And
yes.
I love that.
Thank you. um, so yeah, so I call myself a cancer thriver. I call myself also, well, I'm also a wellness advocate.
Mhm.
Big advocate for everyone's wellness, their well-being. And so I have different types of programs. My whole brand is like I have a nonprofit called Thrive Beyond Cancer. My company is called Thrive by Tekquiree, and it's all about helping people thrive. Whether you have cancer or a chronic illness, or whether you want to thrive and live your life to the fullest, and thrive in your, you know, with your wellness, you know, mind,
Mhm.
body, spirit, health, all of that. So that's what I do. And I'm happy about it. Like I love it. And I
Yes.
call myself a cancer thriver and not a
Uh-huh.
cancer survivor. I switched that because in my being and in my body, when I say thriver, it's like I'm living, you know what I mean? I'm not
Yes.
just going back to
Mhm.
what I survived. And I learned, like, even before my oncologist told me that, you know, you don't have cancer anymore. I had to learn like how to thrive. And I wasn't like even I was thinking about it a little bit, like, well, more so like my focus was on living and thriving.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
once I focused on doing that, like, you know, you asked me the question earlier about how I was able to change, you know, from being in like a trauma, like dealing with trauma, then, you know, coming out of it. And that's how I was able to come out of it. So I really just started living my life, going to all of these different places in the Bay Area, all these places I've always wanted to go to.
Mhm.
Once I started focusing on that and doing things that I love to do and reading and being in the sun and living and smiling and laughing, like, yes, I was still um going through treatment and all of that. But I stopped making the treatment in cancer be like the number one thing in my life and what I was thinking about. And I started making thriving being the number one thing. That, what, a month and a half, 2 months later, my doctor's like, there's nothing there.
Wow.
And and I was like, wow, that's so powerful. Cause I think even now, right? We put something out
Mhm.
there, we pray about something, we take the action or what have you. And when we don't consume our minds with it, it comes to us. you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I was like, wow, like I think about that even now.
Yeah, I think when you use the word survivor, it
Yeah.
implies somehow that you've been a victim of something. And when
Yes.
you're a victim, you're kind of squashed by that victimness. And,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I teach in my work is that don't let yourself be a victim. You might be in prison. You might have done something that's got you in a bad situation, but you can be victorious over that situation. So be a victor and not a victim. And that's exactly what
Yes.
you've done with being a thriver instead of a survivor. And I think
Yes.
that is so powerful. And
Yes.
recently I went to one of your seminars. I forgot what it was about, but um,
Was it
it
Speak
was a
Life and
thrive.
Thrive? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it was just so uplifting and exciting. And there's so much energy and positivity that you bring into the work you do that people can't help but be inspired to do something. I just love that.
Thank you.
I
I
just love
appreciate
that.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, what is your life like now? Has cancer affected the way you live today?
Oh, for sure. Like I live even more so now, and I'm very aware of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And even like being a mom, I'm sure too, probably even for you, like um I think about, you know, I talk about emotions a lot and spirituality and I see I always think about like how I came to be who I am, and even with
Mm-hmm.
dealing with cancer and everything. And so, even with my child, I'm very aware of like how I speak to
Mm-hmm.
him and, um, how he deals with his emotions. And definitely want him to be aware of like people pleasing and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
how we come to become, how we get to be a people pleaser. And
Mm-hmm.
I I'm just more aware and really like live my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
God tells me to do something or go somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. I'm definitely less afraid of doing what I've been, called to do.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I can relate to that. Um, and I'm making a note here
Oh.
because I love that. I have to write that down that you're less afraid of doing what you're called to do.
Yeah.
So many of us are afraid, and it's a risk to step out there and do something different. But
Yeah.
wow, without the risk, there can be no great reward. So,
Oh,
mhm.
that's a word right there.
Yes,
You
yes.
preaching right there.
So, who has been your most important mentor?
Ooh. Um, I've had like some really great coaches. A mentor. I would say like my parents have been really great.
Mhm,
My mom, both of them, they taught me like some amazing things. Like they are my biggest cheerleaders.
mhm,
They just believe that I can do and accomplish anything, like sometimes more than what I believe, And
mhm,
I will say for my mom, like when I was going through everything, even now, even before, she always knew what was going to happen. It was so interesting to me. Like, um, when I had to go to get my first scan, she was there. When I had to get my scan after I started, different types of treatment, she was there. She didn't go with me to get that scan, but before I went to go get the scan, before I went to go meet with my oncologist, I remember this is I remember what she said to me. And I'd see it all in my head. I feel it all in my body.
mhm,
But she was like, it doesn't matter what the doctor report says.
Mm.
All that matters is what God says.
I love
And
that.
so, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it made me like be even more brave, and that it doesn't, like exactly what she said, like, okay, this is not the end. No one knows when it's the
Mm-hmm.
end. And only God can make that call.
Mm-hmm.
So I was prepared to meet with my oncologist and to be less afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would go back home and I'll tell her what happened, she was like, I already knew that. And I'm like, how did you know? How did you know?
Mothers
like,
are so awesome, aren't they? They just
yes!
have this connection, and it's just amazing. I know, through my whole prison journey, I couldn't have made it without my mom. She
Yeah.
was the best example of unconditional love that I've ever witnessed. And all that mattered was that moment, when she was there with me in the visiting room, and anything else, and one time I said to her, "Oh, Mom, look at all this time I'm wasting." And she said, "Toby, we have the whole rest of our lives," and she just was, moms are just so awesome.
They are. Oh, that makes me like tear up.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah. And, my mom was awesome, and she's gone now. And boy, I still miss her. And there's so many times I just want to pick up the phone and call her. And sometimes I do pick up the phone to think to call her. And then I remember, oh, she's gone. But she knows that I need this. So, that's just beautiful. I love that. So was there ever a time when you really felt imprisoned? And what did you do to liberate yourself?
Ooh, yes. There's a couple of times. I mean, from certain jobs,
Mm-hmm.
from, what's very interesting too. I know it seems like I just keep bringing it back to the cancer diagnosis. But like, I had to figure out again who I was.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I came to a point where I didn't know who I was anymore. And I didn't want cancer to define me. How they say, like, you're not your diagnosis.
Right.
And I had to figure, I really did. And I really started doing the work, even honestly, like as a wife too. I had to get clear. I had to clear all the labels.
I love that.
And really focus on me and who I am and who God says that I am. And once I started doing all of that inner work, everything started to get better in my life.
Yes. Yes. That inner work is so important. We find our true selves in there, I think. I did anyway. And
absolutely.
Out here in the world, unless you have something that shakes your world, like going to prison or having a cancer diagnosis or breaking your leg and being unable to go anywhere, unless you have something that stops you dead in your tracks, out here in the world, we are so busy with everything else that we don't take the time to go inside and center ourselves and find ourselves and move forward. So, I look at my stay in prison as one of the biggest blessings in my life. Yeah. Because it forced me to stop and just be.
And that is such a blessing. And until you can experience that, it's like exactly what you said. The busyness just takes over, but that's a whole nother level of being and living when you're able to stop.
Yes. Yes, I so agree. I love that. I just love your story. I met you, I think it was 3 years ago in October at a Women's Starting Movements conference in Chicago. And it was like, I just was like immediately, I need to talk to her. I need to know her. So I just love that we connected. Yes. Yes.
Me too.
It's been beautiful. So is there a question that you would wish that I'd asked you? Is there something else you'd like to share with us that we haven't talked about?
Hmm. I think you've asked most of the questions. No, I loved all the questions that
Oh,
you've asked
good,
me.
good. I'm glad to hear that.
And like I'm like just thinking about my life. No, I think the questions you've asked, I was able to touch on so many different things, you know. Um, yeah, again, it's really like the awareness of life and
Yes.
being I'm always interested in how people come to be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I think you've done an excellent job asking me all of the
thank you.
all of the
You know,
questions.
a lot of the things that you talk about, I think, really come back to gratitude.
Yeah,
And even on your worst day, when there's nothing out there that seems to be good, you can find something to be grateful for. And that
absolutely.
just changes your whole perspective.
Yeah,
And so that's one of the reasons that I'm going to run this episode during Thanksgiving week this year, because I think that this is the best podcast to show that even in the midst of at stage 4 cancer diagnosis, there's something to be grateful for and that there's
absolutely.
something to thrive for. So
Yes.
I just love
Yes,
that. So,
absolutely.
Takiri, is there a question that you'd like to ask me?
Ooh, you know, I was gonna ask you, but you answered it though. Because when I was thinking about, I believe we had like a brief conversation some years ago.
Mhm.
And you also shared with me that you are also a cancer thriver. So
Mhm.
I was going to ask you about that, but you already talked about it. And you
Yes, yes.
so look at you.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Oh,
know
I do
that
have
it's
one
oh,
actually.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So, what would you say to your, I don't know, 20, 25, 30-year-old self?
I would say you are enough. You don't have to go
Mm,
look for someone else to validate you. You don't have to look for a job that will validate you and give and state your worth. You are enough just as you are. And you're
mm.
worth whatever the world can give you.
That's so good. And it's
Yeah.
so true.
Yes.
Oh,
Actually, my therapist
jeez.
asked me that question. What would you tell your younger self? And it came immediately. You're enough. Quit trying to please other people and find your
Yeah,
value somewhere else because you have it in you already. You are enough. So,
yeah.
yeah, I
And you
love
think
that.
that's definitely something that's learned over time, right? Because
Yes.
now
Well,
that
it
I'm in,
came
like, my
about
early
during that,
40s.
yeah, that moment when
Yeah,
I was in prison and I was removed from the busyness of the world. And just like you with your cancer, you're forced to sit with yourself and go inside. And that's really when the magic happens.
yeah, absolutely. And even
Yeah.
now too, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I become busy, a little bit more busy than I want to be, and when I come back to that stillness, like,
Mm-hmm.
It's like the best.
Yes,
And
it
I wish
is,
that's
isn't
something we
it?
were taught to do, yes. I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
teach my son how to have, to instill those types of, being able
Yes.
to be still and honor his time with
Mhm.
himself and all of that. Just
I
because I wish
started
it's
doing
something that
some
I learned earlier.
artwork. Oh, yes, I so agree. I've started doing some artwork that is just kind of mindless, but it but it's that mindlessness that gives your mind the room to expand and grow. Because
Yeah,
it's you're not bothered by things. And
yeah,
so I've just become almost addicted to this art because I can just go away, and
yes,
I just love it. So
yeah.
I think
That's
that's
so
pretty
cool. I
cool.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So, what's one word that inspires you?
Ooh. Mm. I really like the word liberation.
Oh, that's a great one.
I love it. And I before, like, I love freedom too, but like to,
Liberate is an action, and freedom is
yes,
the result. But you
yes,
have to take an action for liberation.
exactly,
Yeah, I like that
exactly.
too. I
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
me be like free, like I can do anything. Like
Hmm.
I'm moving from this to the next, to the next
Yes.
level.
Yes. One of the
Yeah.
taglines for my work is escape your prison. And it's because we all have
Ooh.
prisons. And we have
Yes.
to escape them to find our true self. So
Yes.
I
I
think
love
liberation's a
that.
great word. Yeah. Yeah.
Escape.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Escape your
Okay,
prison. Hmm.
that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
start using that.
That's good. Yeah. I love it too. So, Tekquiree, thank you so much for joining me. I just loved having you on this podcast, and I can't wait to share your story with the world.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, Toby.
You're
And I
so
love what you're
welcome.
doing too. So thanks so much for having me. This has
We'll
been
have
so
to
great.
stay in touch a little bit better than we have the last 3 years.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Thank you for listening to Fierce Conversations with Toby. We appreciate all the support you can give, and I'd like to share 4 ways that really help our show. 1, subscribe to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/fierceconversations, where 10% of our proceeds are used to provide workbooks to women in prison. 2, like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and watch by clicking the plus sign, the thumbs up, or the heart button. Pressing subscribe on YouTube as well helps even more. 3, share this podcast episode with your friends and family by telling them about it and posting it on your social media accounts. 4, write a review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this episode. Your support is truly what keeps this show going. The show notes contain links to all the ways you can support us, as well as links to information for Tekquiree's website and links to purchase my books. Fierce Conversations with Toby is created and hosted by Toby Dorr and produced by Number 3 Productions, a division of Grace Point Publishing. Music created and arranged by Lisa Plass, owner of From the Top Music Studio. This is Fierce Conversations with Toby. Escape your prison